the last song of the Mexica, a tale of gold and survival. In the heart of Tenochtitlan, in the year 1521, the air was thick with smoke and sorrow. The great city, built on the shimmering waters of Lake Texcoco, was a marvel of the world. Chinampas blooming with maize and amaranth twin, pyramids of Templo Mayor piercing the sky, painted red and blue, and bustling markets where 50,000 voices bartered for cacao, turquoise and obsidian. The Mexica, who called themselves Culhua Mexica, not Aztecs, had forged an empire of 6 million souls, spanning 80,000 square miles from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific. Theirs was a civilization of poets and warriors, astronomers and farmers, bound by a faith that wove war and rain into the fabric of life, with gods like Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc guiding their hands. But now, the Spanish, led by Hernán Cortés, had come, their steel swords flashing, their smallpox felling thousands, their greed for gold a fire that consumed all. The way of life in Tenochtitlan Xipilli, a young warrior of 24, stood on the causeway, his macuahuitl, obsidian-edged and heavy, slung across his back. His wife, Citlali, her dark eyes fierce with love, adjusted the cotton mantle over her shoulders, dyed with cochineal from the cactus fields. Their home, a flat-roofed adobe house in the Calpolli of Moyotlan, was modest but vibrant, its walls painted with murals of Quetzalcoatl, its small garden bursting with squash, beans, and epazote. Inside, a metate ground maize for tortillas, and a clay caramel sizzled with tamales stuffed with turkey and chiles. Chocolate, frothy and bitter, mixed with vanilla and honey, was their drink of wealth, sipped from painted gourds. The Mexica diet was a symphony of the land, maize, avocados, tomatoes, and pulque from the maguey plant, sustained by chinampas, those floating gardens that turned swamp into bounty. Their days were ruled by 2 calendars, the 365-day solar cycle and the 260-day ritual cycle, guiding sacrifices and divinations at Templo Mayor, where blood was offered to keep the sun alive. Xipilli was a jaguar warrior, trained in the Telpuchcalli, his life dedicated to the empire's expansion under Moctezuma II, the Hueyi Tlatoani, whose name meant he frowns like a lord. Moctezuma, a son of Ixayacatl, had ruled since 1502, a warrior king who conquered Oaxaca and Chiapas, his coronation marked by the sacred Tiananacatl mushroom. But his reign was unraveling. The Spanish, arriving in 1519, had been mistaken by some for emissaries of Quetzalcoatl, pale and bearded. Moctezuma, cautious, offered them gold, ornate shields, feathered headdresses, and turquoise mosaics, hoping to appease them. Instead, Cortés took him prisoner, and the Mexica's world began to crack. By August 13, 1521, after a brutal siege, Tenochtitlan fell. Cuauhtémoc, the last Tlatoani, surrendered, but the Spanish hunger for gold only grew, their allies from Tlaxcala and Texcoco looting the city's treasures. The secret mission in the shadow of defeat, a council of nobles, priests and warriors gathered in a hidden chamber beneath Templo Mayor. Among them were Xipilli, Citlali, and the priest Tlacaelel, named for the legendary reformer who had shaped the empire. The Spanish were tearing apart Tenochtitlan, melting gold into bars, torturing survivors for secrets. The Mexica knew their culture, its codices, songs and gods, was at risk of erasure. Tlacaelel, his face etched with grief, proposed a desperate plan, to save the last of their gold, not for wealth, but as a sacred relic of their people, and to carry it north to their ancestral homeland, Aztlan, the mythical place of herons. Linguistic evidence suggested Aztlan lay in the northwest, possibly in what is now Utah, where their Uto-Aztecan kin, ancestors of the Shoshone and Paiute, still lived. The gold, masks, pectorals, and ceremonial knives would be hidden, a seed of hope for a future Mexica revival. Xipilli and Citlali were chosen, alongside 10 others, the warrior brothers Esli and Quali, the scout Malinal, the healer Ixtli, and 6 slaves who swore to guard the treasure with their lives. They carried 200 pounds of gold, wrapped in cotton and maguey fiber, hidden in woven baskets. To evade the Spanish, they moved at night, slipping through the causeways, their canoes gliding silently past the ruins of Tlatelolco's marketplace. Smallpox had ravaged their numbers, and hunger gnawed at them, but Citlali's knowledge of herbs, chia seeds and prickly pear, kept them alive. They whispered prayers to Huitzilopochtli, begging for strength, their secrecy absolute. Any betrayal would doom their mission. The grueling journey north. The journey was a crucible. From Tenochtitlan they trekked northwest, through the deserts of Querétaro and Zacatecas, where cacti stood like sentinels and the sun scorched their skin. Malinal, with her sharp eyes, spotted Spanish patrols, forcing detours through thorn-choked ravines. In Durango, a flash flood claimed one slave, his body swept away with a basket of gold. Ixtli, chanting to Tlaloc, saved Quali from a rattlesnake's bite, but the venom left him weak. They ate lizards and mesquite pods, their water gourds dwindling. By the time they reached the Colorado Plateau, 3 more had died, 2 slaves to exhaustion, 1 to a cougar in the night. Xipilli carved their names into a boulder, a silent codex of loss. The Grand Canyon loomed like a wound in the earth, its 277-mile length a chasm of red and gold stone, a mile deep and up to 18 miles wide. The Mexica stood at the south rim, near what is now Desert View, the wind howling through the piñon pines. Crossing was unthinkable, yet they had no choice. Malinal scouted a narrow trail, likely near the Bright Angel Fault, where ancient ancestral Puebloan paths wound down to the Colorado River. The descent took 2 days, their sandals fraying on jagged shale, their gold-laden baskets threatening to tip them into the abyss. Ixtli, carrying the heaviest load, slipped on a switchback, his scream echoing as he plummeted 200 feet, his body lost to the rocks below. Citlali wept, but Xipilli urged them on, his voice hoarse. For our children's children. At the river, they built rafts from cottonwood and reeds, lashing them with yucca fiber. The Colorado, swollen from spring rains, churned with whitewater. 2 slaves drowned when their raft splintered on a boulder, their gold sinking to the riverbed. The survivors, now 7, climbed the north rim, their bodies battered, their spirits fraying. They pressed on through the Kaibab Plateau, its ponderosa forests a brief respite, until they reached the Vermilion Cliffs, their red walls glowing like the pyramids of home. The ancestors of Kanab. By late 1522, they arrived in the Kanab Valley, a high desert oasis at 4,970 feet, surrounded by the coral-pink sands of Moquith Mountain, the stark white cliffs of Johnson Canyon, and the sagebrush flats stretching toward Zion's towering sandstone. The Kanab Creek, fed by snowmelt, carved a green thread through the arid land, its cottonwoods whispering of life. Here lived the southern Paiute, kin to the Mexica through the Uto-Aztecan tongue, their language a distant echo of Nahuatl. The Paiute, semi-nomadic hunters of deer and gatherers of piñon nuts, lived in wickiups, domed shelters of willow and grass, moving with the seasons. Their oral histories spoke of ancestors who came from the south, perhaps the Mexica's own kin, who had diverged centuries ago, around 700 BCE, according to linguist Sidney Lamb. The Paiute elder, Sawiak, welcomed the Mexica, recognizing their speech and the feathered staff Xipilli carried, a symbol of Huitzilopochtli. Sawiak's people knew of Aztlan, a place of 7 caves, and pointed to a network of caverns in Johnson Canyon, 10 miles east, where water seeped into hidden pools. The Mexica shared cacao beans and a gold pendant, earning the Paiute's trust. Sawiak warned of Spanish scouts rumored to roam north, seeking gold. The Mexica vowed secrecy, their mission now a sacred pact with their northern kin. Hiding the gold, the Mexicas scouted the Kanab region, a landscape of slot canyons, alcoves and springs. Johnson Canyon, with its 200-foot cliffs, hid a labyrinth of caves, some with petroglyphs, spirals, snakes and stars, etched by Paiute ancestors. Xipilli and Quali, guided by Malinal, found a deep cavern with a narrow mouth, its interior cool and damp, a spring forming a turquoise pool at its heart. Here they buried half the gold, masks and knives wrapped in megi, beneath the pool's sediment, sealing the entrance with sandstone slabs. Citlali carved Nahuatl symbols, a reed, a heron, into the rock, a codex for future generations. At 3 Lakes, a series of ponds north of Kanab, fed by underground springs, they sank the remaining gold into a deep pit, covering it with mud and reeds. Xipilli spoke a prayer to Chalciutlicu, goddess of waters, to guard it. The slaves, their duty done, were honored as warriors, but Tlacaelel, fearing betrayal, insisted on their silence. In a ritual under a full moon, they drank pulque laced with datura, their spirits sent to Mictlan to protect the treasure forever. Only Xipilli, Citlali, Quali, Malinal and Xipilli remained. The last strive for culture, the Mexica settled among the Paiute, building adobe huts near Kanab Creek, blending their ways with their cousins. Citlali taught the Paiute to grind maize, while Tsawiak shared knowledge of desert plants. Xipilli etched a codex on deerskin, recording the fall of Tenochtitlán, the journey, and the gold's hiding places, written in Nahuatl pictographs. He hid it in a crevice near Moquith Mountain, praying it would survive. But the Spanish shadow loomed. In 1523, a patrol reached the Grand Canyon's rim, and Malinal, scouting, was captured and tortured. She died without speaking, her silence a final gift. Quali fell to fever, Xipilli to grief, leaving Xipilli and Citlali alone. They wove Mexica songs into Paiute tales, teaching children the names of Huitzilopochtli and Tlaloc. In 1525, as Spanish rumors grew, Xipilli and Citlali, now frail, climbed to a cliff overlooking Kanab's valley, its pink dunes and green creek a new Aztlan. They burned their feathered cloaks, scattering the ashes, and spoke their last words in Nahuatl. Our heart endures. They vanished into the canyons, perhaps joining the gold's guardians, their fate a mystery. The legend today. The Kanab Valley, with its 7,000-foot plateaus and crimson cliffs, holds the legend of Montezuma's treasure. In 1914, Freddie Crystal, a prospector, arrived with a map from a Mexican monastery, claiming it showed Aztec gold in Johnson Canyon. He rallied Kanab's townsfolk, unearthing tunnels and petroglyphs but no treasure. The caves, with their hidden pools, and 3 Lakes, with its murky depths, remain untouched, whispered to hold a curse. Paiute elders speak of southern kin who came with riches, their stories carved in rock. The gold, if it exists, lies in Kanab's secret places, a testament to the Mexica's last strive, a culture that sang, fought and loved, refusing to fade even as the Spanish tide swept over them.